All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Launch Minnesota Friday Forum. We do these on the fourth Friday of every month, and this week we are spotlighting MNSBIR, which is one of the many amazing resources in Minnesota's startup scene here. SBIR has infused millions into Minnesota's economy and helped many startups. I was just talking to Pat before we got started, and every time we survey our grantees and ask them about their favorite resources in Minnesota, it's consistently MNSBIR. Everybody talks about how much it's helped their business and, advanced any research that they need. So we're happy to be spotlighting this amazing resource and group and some companies that have benefited from it. And so I'm going to hand it over to Pat Dillon, and she's going to take us from here.
All right. Hey, thank you, Maddie. Hello, everyone, on this cooler Friday. So I'm Pat Dillon, and I run this organization called Minnesota SBIR Inc., MNSBIR, and we're here to help support those startups and small businesses that have innovative technologies to secure federal research funding through the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer programs. And so today's session, I'm going to have an overview of us and who we are, what we do, etc. And then we'll launch into four presentations of four companies that we've worked with over the years to help them secure funding to support what they're doing. So how are we funded? Well, we get funding through the Small Business Administration and through funding through the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. And we have in-kind support through Launch Minnesota and then Mayo Clinic Office of Entrepreneurship. And we work very closely with the University of Minnesota Technology Commercialization Office and the Home Center for Entrepreneurship. So that makes up our very lean budget. We were happy to secure $1 million through the legislative session this year, so we're very excited about getting that rolling forward. So a little bit about me. So, I've been involved with these two programs for a very long time, 30 years, and I can tell you that these programs continue to change throughout the years. And one thing that is certainly evident is that there's never a lack of ideas or concepts or projects that companies are thinking of, and at the end of the day, they need funding to help de-risk that technology and move it forward. So having been involved with these programs for a long time, I've witnessed a lot of successes and some failures along the way. I have a background, and I used to work in the SBDC network many years ago. Prior to that, I was a PTAC counselor. So if you're familiar with the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, and now it's called the Apex Accelerator, I have that experience as well. In fact, that's kind of where I cut my teeth on this whole world of federal procurement, and which, of course, SBIR is part of that. And then I had a stint over in Wisconsin with the Wisconsin Entrepreneurs Network, which was part of the Governor's Grow Wisconsin plan, which for me was an opportunity to be part of something that was really new and novel in the economic development arena. And that, to me, is kind of like was a precursor to Launch Minnesota, but it was just happened to be in Wisconsin. And there's an award that's given for people that have had excellence in the SBIR program, which is the Tibbetts Award, which is actually named after the individual at the National Science Foundation who ran a pilot program which established the SBIR program in 1982. And, I'm a longtime veteran of the United States Navy, both active and reserve. And I think that the military experience really plays very well into the SBIR and STTR programs, because the largest participant in the program is the Department of Defense. So understanding that language and that environment, I think, is very, very helpful. And of course, I'm a proud recipient of bachelor's and master's degree from Winona State University and so forth. So when we look at our team, there's me, and then we have our independent consultants and independent contractors, and of course our board of directors. And that's what makes up MNSBIR Inc. So we are a private nonprofit organization, and as I said, we're focused on SBIR and STTR, which is called America's Seed Fund. And we're also, involved with other federal R&D programs when it relates to a company and a project that they want to focus on. SBIR and STTR makes up about $4 billion a year. And the programs are in existence until 2025. So in 2024, 25, SBIR will go through reauthorization, or maybe Congress will finally see the light and they'll make it a permanent program. So we deliver outreach, education, coaching, and business and technical assistance to startups and small businesses up to 500 employees. And of course, the funding is non-dilutive. It comes in the form of a grant or a contract. And then it really enables that small business to de-risk that technology and to move it towards the creation of a product or service or process that actually is going to generate revenues for the business. So since we were founded in 2014, we were a program first with META, and then we moved over to the Minnesota High Tech Association. And then last year in 2021, we became our own entity. But we have seen, continual growth and impact over the years. And, these two programs are highly, highly competitive. And so we want to do a really good job of making sure that who's ever coming into the program, into our accelerator, which I'll talk about later, we want to make sure that they have a reasonably good chance of being successful. It might take once or twice to get to the winner's circle, but we want them to use their time and energy wisely. And this program is not for everyone. It's very, very competitive. So here are some of the companies that we've worked with over the years, and it's either before or after the award, and we continue to work with them, and because federal R&D is a very complex and hard program to navigate, at the federal level. So there's lots of rules, regs, and requirements that pop up on the radar screen for these companies, and we're here as a resource to help them navigate through that process. Very proud to have been a part of the success of these companies and getting funded. And here are some more. I mean, we've been involved I've been involved in a lot of companies. These are just basically since 2014. So Minnesota companies, there's a whole bunch of them that, don't need our help because they've already know how to do this and so forth. And then there's the new ones that are coming in and current ones that are in the pipeline. But, there's been 440 companies funded, and we're reaching $1 billion. This is taken us, 40 plus years to get to that point. But, this is a major milestone. So some of you might ask, well, where does Minnesota rank with the rest of the states? Well, for some calculations, it's about 22 is our rank among the 50 states. So we're right in the middle. We can do better. That's been my mantra for a while. So our process, we're really focused on education, coaching, and technical assistance. And it really starts with that novel concept or that project that a company is working on. And we have this technology readiness assessment, and we want people to do this self-assessment. What am I getting myself into? This is going to be a heavy lift. So we want to make sure that they understand what the framework is. And so this is a document that we created. We don't need people to answer the questions. We just want to get them in the right mindset. And then the next step is actually to attend our monthly, overview of the seed fund. This is a 1 hour, hour and a half kind of a session. It's just high level. This is what the details of the programs and so forth. But then if you want to get in deeper, we are going to be offering deep dives. Well, we have in the past for the National Institutes of Health and the Department of Defense and the National Science Foundation. But now we're going to offer a deep dive for each of the 11 agencies that participates, and some agencies are multiple times throughout the year. So there's going to be about 40 different sessions each year that we're going to make available to the small business community. And then as we're moving down this pathway, we're in the education, but then we have to jump into the bread and butter of what we do, which is the accelerator. And then, of course, our new thing, which is called the Commercialization Institute. And this is where we really roll up our sleeves and we help companies navigate through this crazy world of federal R&D. And the goal is to get the companies funded and to help them continue to get funding, because I've never met an entrepreneur with just one idea. So we want to help bring those federal dollars back to Minnesota. And so I often say it's a journey, not a destination. So these are some of the things that we get involved in when we're working with companies in the accelerator. And it's all about applying for funding. That's all it is. It's not a business accelerator or anything to that. There's plenty of those in the ecosystem. What we're focused on is helping those qualified companies with qualifying projects to apply for funding. And the Institute, this is all about bridging that gap between research and commercial viability. And we're going to have some very experienced people as consultants in the Commercialization Institute. And that will be available to support the companies if they choose to participate in that effort. And so one of the other things that we're going to do is really focus more on helping companies transition into sole source procurement contracts. And this is a really important aspect of the SBIR and STTR programs. And this is, in my mind, most people think about SBIR and STTRs as just phase 1, phase 2. But in reality, the congressional legislation, even from the day it was signed into law by President Reagan, there was a phase 3 component to the programs. And there is more and more focus from the federal agencies to help companies transition into procurement opportunities. And so we want to be a part of that process and help our companies navigate that complicated world of procurements. So when I asked the companies to consider presenting today, I wanted a mix. I wanted a mix of companies that not only were like really early stage companies along the path towards those that are existing. So today's session, we're going to talk about Adapt Design Works, which is a new company, well, sort of a new company, but they just got funded last year. And then Newborn Medical, who I worked with a couple of years ago. And so they're sort of moving down this path towards developing their technology and their product. And then Chromatic 3D Materials. They've been very successful, and I just love reading all about their success and all the different kinds of products that they are 3D printing with their materials. And of course, you're going to hear from Cora, Dr. Cora Liebig, on what they've done. And then Carrie Moroshik from Third Wave Systems. I mean, they've won multiple awards with the Department of Defense since 2001. So they've been at this for a while, and they're up to 50 employees. I don't know how many employees Chromatic 3D Materials has, but maybe it's probably around 25, 30, maybe even more than that. Newborn is still a very young company, and so is Adapt Design Works. I wanted to share that, there's a concept or a misconception, I guess, that SBIR is just for startups, and that's true. It's used a lot for that purpose, but there's a lot of small businesses that, should be looking at this source of funding. And certainly there are some that, once you get started in this process, and I always jokingly say you get SBIR in your blood, then you continue on. You always have ideas or concepts, and you need funding to bring it to marketplace. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob, and then Rob can provide his background and so forth, and then we'll move to Dr. Caitlin McGrattan, and then we'll move to Dr. Cora Liebig. And then we'll also talk with Carrie Miroshik with Third Wave Systems. So I'm going to put their bios in the chat room so you can at least read about them as they're talking. And I'll turn it over to Rob now.
All right. Well, thanks, Pat. So I'm Rob Woodlake. I am CEO of Adapt Design Works and founder, and my background, I went to I grew up in Minnesota, and then I went to Montana State and got an industrial engineering degree and started a company there in outdoor manufacturing. So that's kind of really what I was into. And at the time, and then I broke my neck in 2011 during a rafting trip in the Grand Canyon, and got really into the spinal cord injury research, and that led me down a pathway to get connected with some researchers that were developing a system to reduce the risk of pressure injuries for wheelchair users. And that was a couple of years ago. I also was working for a startup company called Abilitech Medical, and we received some SBIR awards then, developing an exoskeleton for arms and hands. And so that was kind of where I got my feet wet with SBIR grants back in 2018. Since then, so Adapt Design Works, I also founded in 2018 to start. As a quadriplegic, I use a lot of assistive technology, and so finding easy and cheap solutions that help me and allowing me to help other people by making these things and giving them or selling them, and for kind of helping people with disabilities. But so the Sense Seat is part of that group out of the Mayo Clinic. They had been working on this project for over 10 years with various academic grants. And they brought me in about 5 years ago as a consumer community member researcher. And I kind of realized it was time to get this on the market versus kind of continuing the academic research. I mean, the academic research continues, but so my background in entrepreneurship and engineering and med device, we decided to go through my company and try to advance this further. And so we reached out to Pat again and applied for an STTR grant. And most National Institutes of Health grants are around 250,000, but because we pursued a dementia Alzheimer's angle, so some of these grants you can get double the amount if it's a specific interest area. And so in the last year, we've raised around 525,000 from the NIH phase 1 and Launch Minnesota grants in non-dilutive funding, and that's without investors and It's really allowed us to advance our technology and advance the field of pressure sensing, really, especially for our need, which is an interface between a seated surface with nothing. My company grew from, employee of one, me, to 5 part-time employees. And we've hired around 20 paid consultants, mostly in Minnesota. Not full-time, but, they're involved in this project. And, and our goal really is to develop a working proof of concept from this phase one that's kind of the purpose of seed funding too, but get a working proof of concept and be capable to demonstrate this technology by the end of the year for phase 2 grant and investor funding. So, we want to develop something that, and we're not creating something completely new. There are pressure sensing mats and flat surfaces, like force sensing, but we're trying to do it better and a little differently than they are. And so it's allowed us to have the flexibility to really dive into this R&D at this phase and kind of explore new ideas and kind of develop something new that is a little better than our competitors, hopefully. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about it. Pat wanted us to talk a little bit about lessons learned. So I think, when we applied for this, and I've known this for a while, but with these grants, usually when you start a business, you're kind of sometimes in it alone, and, get help, like reach out to Minnesota SBIR. They're free, they're really helpful, a ton of resources. They know all the detailed things. There's a lot of rules and processes, especially when you're kind of against the deadline wall of getting that grant. And there's all these last minute little nuances with submitting your grants, and that kind of leads into the next thing, like give yourself plenty of time to prepare. These grants typically you can't do things alone, so getting quotes and partners and consultants, contractors, that takes time. And making sure that you really have a good scope of work planned out with everyone on the team that takes time and planning, and then getting all the rules and procedures and page formats correct, and writing a good grant is pretty key. So I think our grants, with phase 1 grants, I like to give myself at least 3 months from kind of starting the hard work. I'm thinking about it probably 6 months ahead, but yeah. And when you're writing that grant, you really want a good plan. Out of the phase 1 grants, I think I've gotten 3 of them now, or been involved in 3 successful phase 1s. And each one has been successful in the first round, which is, so I'm good on the stats, but, they say a grant usually has a 16% return rate on the first submission. So if you don't get it on the first time, reapply, and take the feedback and just keep reapplying. It's okay if you don't get it the first time. You should plan for that. But my model has always kind of been with these phase 1s is kind of understand your problem, develop and prototype it, and then validate it. So really put it through some tests. Phase 2, which I'm kind of thinking, and probably need to talk more with Pat about this, but it's redefining your reconfiguring your product past that proof of concept, and then validating it. So, clinical trials, if you're doing a med device. So,
Okay,
Uh,
Rob, we're gonna have to cut you
10
off.
minutes.
I
All
know you
right.
want to talk
Yeah.
more.
No, I got plenty, but
But you know what? It's amazing. You had a
Yeah.
3 for 3. That's great.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Caitlin McGrattan, who, and I probably didn't
Well,
get that right, but Newborn Medical. So Caitlin and I don't know, 2 years, 3 years ago is when we worked together, and you were successful in getting your phase 1, and then she reappeared. And so I said, now we're moving towards this phase 2 application. So Caitlin, I'm just gonna put your bio in the chat box, and then you can tell us about Newborn Medical and the product that you're working on, and the population that's being served by that product.
Perfect. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Great. So yes, thank you for inviting me to be here. My name is Kate McGrath, and I'm a professor at the University of Minnesota. And I am CEO of Newborn Medical. And Newborn Medical is a company that we developed to create a non-invasive method of evaluating infant feeding. My parents spent a lot of time wondering what I was getting my PhD in when I said infant feeding, because for anyone who has a baby that feeding goes well, it seems pretty seamless. But actually a lot of babies have trouble with it, such as preterm babies. Pretty much all of those babies can't eat when they are first born. And so we developed a non-invasive way to evaluate this with the goal of enabling earlier intervention, better health outcomes, and earlier hospital discharge. So a little bit I think with most things in my life, they're kind of happy accidents, I think, which is a fun way to go through life. And so, I was, getting drink at happy hour. I was at Chicago at the time at Northwestern, and I'm a scientist, so pretty much all I have to talk about at a bar is science. And so I was talking about this, data that I had relating to baby feeding. And at the point, I had this rigged up system that I was using to collect data that I'm pretty sure included duct tape and other items that I'm shocked people let me bring into the NICU. And, next to me, it just so happened that, there was a group of people from University of Chicago Booth Business School, and they had just opened up this, big challenge essentially where they have a lot of capital from venture capitalists put in, and you compete, you start a business and compete for it. And so all of these guys at Booth were really interested in starting a business. None of them had any idea about the business to start, but they wanted to be on board with that. And so it really was a really nice alignment and collaboration in that. And so our company, kind of starting from that, we had 3 key members, myself from a scientific and clinical aspect. We had John Lindsay, who was our, money guy and primarily looking over the money and the business component of things. And then we had Kyle Dahlstrom, who is a med device engineer at Medtronic. And so the 3 of us really worked together to take this kind of duct tape device that we currently had and turn it into what we now call our smart bottle. So our funding started out going through that, venture capitalists, the New Venture Challenge at UChicago. And I know they have them at a lot of places. And I would say that this was, for me, not coming from the business side of things, was by far the most valuable experience. From a scientific standpoint, I've always tell people, I think they kind of in your training, you get beat down the entire time, getting convinced that you know nothing until when you get out, and then you're supposed to feel like you know something. And so the entire time we were going through this competition, I was saying, well, we have a lot of data for this, but, and, kind of always pointing out the flaws. And, the biggest value I took away from that experience, aside from the money that we acquired from it, was how I was watching this group of primarily men get up talking about science and medical things they knew nothing about, but saying it with so much confidence. And that was kind of a good learning experience where I said, this is very different from, where my typical scientific forums where you have to be very careful to only speak to exactly the things that you have and really talk about the potential. And so that is kind of what led us down this road. We achieved, I think we acquired about $300,000 in funding from that. And to be honest, I am a big fan of outsourcing when you have experts in different areas. So I really let John and Kyle handle most of like the finance parts, but I know the funding through that and many other of these like incubator kinds of things at universities is pretty good because the return rate is much better than if you went to like an outside investor kind of thing. It's sheltered in a way. So after we took that funding and we used that to purchase a really nice 3D printer, that was really key because that was how we did most of our prototyping of early development. And then the other big part that went towards the patenting process, which was quite the process. So we just acquired the patent a couple weeks ago. So that was about 4 years later from when we started. So it was, a long time coming, but a valuable thing now in hindsight. So after we got that funding, then we went into the looking into the SBIR, STTR, and really where we all sat was we were all in jobs that we loved. We weren't looking to, quit our jobs at this point. And, we all had young families. It just really wasn't in the cards for anybody. And so what we did is we ended up going the STTR route. Everyone kind of working on it nights and weekends as they could. And then we would hire in other individuals. So in terms of company, like employees, I would say there's the 3 of us, but we're not full-time by any means in the company. This is something that, we're doing and we're honestly purposely going a little bit slow in it because we do have full-time jobs. And so, we've had many opportunities for investments from other sources outside of NIH, private companies and things like that. Cardinal Health was at one point interested in it. For us, we don't want, at this point, we feel like we have enough options with the STTR, SBIR route that's non-diluted, and we're not in a rush. So we're going to just keep going until we can't go any further, and then we'll look at other options is really our philosophy and how we're going. Maybe it's right or wrong. I guess we'll see.
So Caitlin, could you talk very briefly, and then I got to switch over to Cora because I took too long this morning. So your commercialization strategy is to be acquired by a large company. So, and that's a viable commercialization strategy for those of you that are on the call.
Yeah, our strategy has always been acquisition. I love science. I don't want to stop doing science from my career standpoint. And I like where I am. I think all of us feel that way. And we know that there's big companies that are great at this type of thing, and we don't look to go into that. So from a very early stage in this, we started talking to these companies and getting in front of them. In fact, Dr. Brown's the top baby bottle companies in the world right now. And they actually are collaborating with us to manufacture the nipples with them as a potential acquisition source. So yeah, our plan is very much as soon as we get the product ready, enough data behind it, FDA approval, then to look for someone for acquisition, and then with a goal of maintaining a close collaboration with that company so that we can continue to feed science into it, because as many of you know, you can create something, but if you don't have continued science going into it, especially from a clinical perspective, that the uptake is pretty limited. So that's really our strategy going into the current device. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Caitlin. All right, now we're going to turn it over to Dr. Cora Liebig. So Cora and I met, I think 2016 or 2017 is my guess. And
2016 for sure.
2016, see?
Yeah.
And I remember we're sitting in a little conference room and she says, well, I don't know if I'm a good fit for SBIR. And I just like, oh, yes, you are. And here you are.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I'm gonna turn it over to Cora, and it's just so fun to see her success and the impact that chromatic 3D materials is having.
Great. Thanks, Pat. And thanks for the invitation to come speak. So what we're building at Chromatic is a 3D printing technology company, and just a little bit on where we're at today. We're really the only company in the market making printable thermoset engineered materials, which is just a way of saying we make really strong 3D printing materials where there's a lot of chemistry involved. And so we're really at the core a chemistry company. And the result is that our materials are twice as strong or sometimes 10 times as strong as the next best competitor. And what that's getting us is a lot of momentum really globally
in the US, Europe, and Asia. And, we have 50 customers and partners in our pipeline, and we have early revenue in both medical and transportation sectors. I think we did a count. There's probably, 100 trains and buses running around with our parts in them. So that's really exciting. And just a little bit about our team. We have 15 employees in the US here in Golden Valley. And, they're additive engineers, chemists, software developers. We have 3 employees in Germany. So we actually established a German subsidiary back in 2020. We have about 7 regular consultants that are about, 20 hours a week, part-time to full-time. We're at what people would say is an early revenue stage. And we have $12 million raised from venture capital. And, that's really all I'll share about the company, except to say I got my start really with the SBIR funding. And I still remember that day in 2016 when I came to Pat and I was like, okay, I've been thinking about my business plan. And, and Pat was really very helpful in helping us secure that first grant, helping us identify which agency was the right one to go with, where, we ended up winning with the National Science Foundation, even though I've applied to DoD as well as NIH. And Pat was instrumental in helping to really focus down our ideas, and really do the craftsmanship that's necessary for really having a good application to the government agencies. She knows the agencies so well. And I think that there's applying for the grants for the purposes of applying for the grants, but there's no question that your business gets better in that process. You focus your messages, you learn how to communicate what your company's about and what your ideas are to an audience that's totally unfamiliar with it. And, and that continues with the agency that you work with. So the National Science Foundation has also become, really helpful for helping me understand how to get my business better. And I've had the fortune of being able to be on some of the review panels now, which also helps you get really good insight into what the agencies are looking for and how other companies go after it. So there's no question that this business building journey is one where you need to be open for help. You need to take the help. There's tough things to hear from and messages that are also good attaboys. But I think some of the red marks I would get from Pat rivaled those of my mom back in high school. So, and it's all good. I listened. It was good, So,
and don't call me a grant writer because I am not a grant writer.
But you know what they're looking for. Pat. So, and the other thing, just a point of advice. I remember, back 2016, 2017. I would look at other companies like mine in the room who were also trying to get their businesses going. And, there were times I would say, man, look at all these fabulous companies. I don't stand a chance, but it's really the process of building your business is one of, it's definitely 95% perspiration, 5% inspiration. And grant writing is just another part of that perspiration piece. And I think it's interesting that a lot of the people that I would look at around the room at that time, 2016, 2017, and thought, wow, what's it going to take for me to get there? I'm not sure many of them are around anymore. And so it's definitely a case where, you might look at the field and say, what's it going to take for my business to be as successful as Cora's or Carrie's or Bob's? And the reality is that you really don't know. You have to just keep working at it and have the conviction in your heart, in your team, that you're working on something that the market wants. and you know, stay the course with that. So so I'm completely indebted to the SBIR program. Definitely helped get my start, helped get my business better. And we still have a long way to go, but it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey.
Thank you, Cora. It's wonderful to hear your comments. So with that, I'm going to turn it now over to Carrie Miroshik, who's the CEO, founder and CEO of Third Wave Systems. And so they are the oldest company on this call today. And so you got your start, you got your first award in 2001 with the Department of Defense or with the Air Force. I'm trying to remember.
That was with the Air Force.
Air Force, okay.
Like
so
yesterday.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, again, it's, you know, even though, you know, Carrie doesn't need any help with SBIR, but there are some things that, you know, come up where, you know, either, you know, Lisa, you know, one of the, I think finance management or something at the company and so forth. So we're still here to, you know, support any of these companies that are still in this portfolio of operating in the federal R&D arena. We want them to be successful, and hopefully we'll have a conversation about our phase 3 sole source program, which that's the next step for you guys, or you're probably already there already. So anyway, so I'm going to turn it over to Carrie, and I'll let you talk about Third Wave Systems.
Thanks, Pat. You know, like I said, I can't believe it's 2001. It seems like yesterday. Part of the reason why that's 22 years ago, but we're constantly reinventing ourselves. And Pat had a great point this morning about, you know, it's for new, you know, pre-venture capital ideas. That's how we look at it. We're constantly looking at pushing our technology in radically different ways. Our market's changing, our customers are changing, their needs are changing, and those crazy ideas we love to work with our partners in the government to develop ideas and get early stage funding from them. So you know, historically speaking, we're about 50 people. We'll do about 12 million this year. And we've gotten, I think, 15 phase 2s over the years, and we're just in process of getting our 3rd and 4th phase 3, which we're really excited about, and we should be 80 people at this time by next year. So we're seeing some real growth right now. And you know, as far as just a couple of things here, some of our secret sauce that we've learned over the years. Most of our work's been with the DoD, but we've done NSF, we've done work with NIST and DOE funding as well. For writing a winner, and this is especially true for phase 2, we always try to get a letter of support from one of our end customers supporting this thing. That's really critical. Higher up in the organization, if you've got customers using your products today, the higher up the better. And what makes it very, very likely that you'll get a phase 2 is getting them to commit some cash for your proof of concept up front. And if they can put that in the letter, there's a really good chance you're going to win. So, you know, and our customers are a lot of DoD suppliers. So that's who we try to target. The other thing is, you know, if you're early stage starting up, the resources in this state are truly amazing. Pat's got an amazing team she's put together. If you're doing DoD funding, I'd encourage you to talk to Chip Langan at the Defense Alliance and get to know people. Go to the SBIR conferences and roadmap reviews for the various agencies. They've all got them. They're all public, and you'll meet people. So, you know, getting out of your office, or even if you're a startup and you're in your parents' basement, get out of there, okay? Get out, and people do business with people. We had TPOC come in last month, and we, over drinks and dinner, we came up with 2 solicitation topics that we're writing. And those ideas were created on a napkin at Maynard's on Lake Minnetonka. So people do business with people, and you know, there's so many people out there that want to help. Those are two. You know, as you move along in your journey, I mean, I can't I can't begin to talk enough about how special it is to have Congresswoman McCollum being the ranking member on defense appropriations, and what she's done for technology in the state of Minnesota is absolutely amazing. So, and then, you know, probably we keep score. We're excited when we get a phase one. No question about it. We're jacked up. We go out and celebrate. We go to happy hour. We're right across the street here from a couple of places. We celebrate. That next morning we get together and we say, how are we going to get to phase two? And what's our win strategy? And what can we demonstrate with, we call it an MVP, minimum viable product. So we start thinking about phase two and beyond right away, because ultimately this SBIR, they really keep score with not how many SBIRs you've won, but how much you've commercialized. And there's nothing like it anywhere. We do a lot of business in Germany. We do a ton of business in R&D in Germany, England, a little bit in Japan. There's nothing like the SBIR anywhere in the world. It's really special. So it's great for technology, and the business climate in America is like no other as well. So on that note, there's one final thing, and it's an ask of everybody here today. Call your congressperson and ask them to reinstitute the R&E tax credit. It's transformational for crossing the valley of death, because we're all tech people. And what do? When we start making money, we double down on our technology. And to be able to take a tax credit on that is, I honestly don't know how we could do that, how we could grow the business without the R&E tax credit. It's provided millions of dollars of inadvertent seed capital to do more R&D and do more self-funded R&D. That just expired here over last at the end of last year. So and nobody's talking about it. It's a game changer. So anyways, I could go on all day, but just remember, there's a lot of people on your side. There's way more people than you can even imagine. So thanks, Pat, and for everything you do.
I think we're having a hard, we can't hear you right now. It doesn't look like you're muted, but we can't hear you. No, maybe you want to log out and re-enter the call, and that could help.
Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, now we can hear you. Okay, great, thanks.
No, never mind. I know what I did.
Oh.
Okay, so you probably noticed that Carrie's terminology was different than the other speakers. It's because he's in the Department of Defense arena. So when the military refers to SBIR as SBIRs and sitters. And then he used the word TPOC. And you go, okay, that's another military acronym. It's technical point of contact. So one thing that is so evident in the programs, and when you're only dealing with maybe one or two agencies, you know, you learn how to interact with that particular agency, how they do business and so forth. But when I think about all the agencies, there are all 11 of them, they're like children. They all do something different, and they do business differently. So your job, if you want to step into this arena, is you got to learn how they do business, their terminology, their processes and systems, and so forth. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions, because, we've got these amazing people that, started with their dream and they're doing it. They're doing it. So with that, who's going to ask the first question? Nobody has a question? All right, I'm gonna pick on somebody. That's what I'm gonna do. All right. So let's go with Grace. She had posted in the chat box that she's tried twice. So which agency did you target, Grace?
Oh, we submitted to the NIH. So the first time is for triple negative breast cancer. It's a novel therapeutic agency. And the second time we submit for the brain tumor board, and we got nothing. But today, by listening to 3 panelists and you talk, we probably consider we will try again.
Yes.
Thanks.
You never give up. I think Amy said that. Never give up. You got to be in it for the long haul. Siba, you have a question.
Yes, I do. Thank you. So I heard some of you guys talk about getting multiple phase 1 awards. I have been lucky enough to get one from NSF, and I know that NSF doesn't allow more than one SBIR award. Are people going into different agencies?
Yes, I think you should be looking at the Department of Defense because of your technology solution. There might be a definite fit to address the mosquito issue that exists in military austere environments. So maybe you want to just kind of quickly just share with the group what your technology solution is.
Yeah, so we are a biotechnology company. I'm Siba Das from Novuclade. What we do is genetically sterilize insects and for biocontrol purposes. You might have heard this in news. We sterilize insects genetically, release them into the environment. They mate with the wild insects and control the population. So no spraying of chemicals required. It's environmental friendly and safe. And we're working on fruit flies at the moment, but our technology is applicable to any sexually reproducing organism we can think of.
Okay.
So, quickly, we have an award from DARPA, not SBIR, but a different award. So I know that DARPA is somewhat interested, but I was more asking about SBIR's. How are people getting multiple SBIRs? Do they have different ideas going into different agencies?
Yes. Like I've said, I've never met an entrepreneur with just one idea. So, we always talk about having a multi-agency strategy or multi-project strategy, because, there's a big pot of money, and, it's like you need funding to support your R&D roadmaps and product development efforts and so forth. So the key thing is to think very broadly and outside the box, and really looking at these agencies as a potential funding source. It'd be DOD, it'd be USDA, etc. So let's have a conversation about that, Siba, sometime after September. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So Pinar, go ahead.
Hi. I'm Pinar Karacamandic. I'm also faculty at the U and a founder of Xantos Health, an SBIR phase 1 recipient company. Now, I have one general question. So we are trying to time our SBIR phase 2 submission. And of course, we have a limited amount of time where we can submit, phase 2s, and it's their resubmissions. I was wondering, what is the role, like how much the agencies value actual published literature coming out of phase 1s for awarding phase 2s? Because phase 1 is typically when you create the prototype, right? You may not actually have publications showing results or anything. So I mean, I was just wondering whether we have currently a funded pilot that we're doing a pilot, and I was wondering whether we should kind of wait a little bit to learn more about the pilot results that we can share that's beyond our phase 1. Does that increase our chance of phase 2 versus this phase 2 not care too much about prior publications? Thanks.
Cora, you want to take that question? You're on mute.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow the question. Can you say it again?
Sure, it was, whether publications are important as a part of a phase 1 effort.
I mean, I think it really depends a lot on the agency. I think NSF and NIH seem to be much more, they really like to see the publications. With my experience with National Science Foundation, they really want to see that you have a strong awareness of the landscape. If you come across as not really understanding the competitive field, both from a scientific perspective as well as a commercial perspective, then that's definitely a liability. So, and certainly having a track record of publications helps, but it's not necessary. You just need to make sure that you're conveying a technical competence. And I think that's one of the key elements, especially for NSF and NIH, is that you need to show that you have, let's say, academic knowledge or technical prowess, I'll call it, in the field. It doesn't mean that you have to be the technical leader in the field, but it means that you should know what you're talking about. And you should be able to demonstrate that.
Yeah. So Rob raised his hand here.
Yeah. And my experience with feedback and my academic, I only have a Bachelor of Science in Engineering.
All right, everyone, we are almost at time. Any final questions? Last minute call for questions from this amazing group. Okay, well then we will wrap things up. Thank you so much to Pat and these founders for volunteering to speak with us this morning. We are so grateful for your insights on this very valuable yet sometimes difficult to navigate program. Again, thanks for coming to the Friday Forum. We do these on the 4th Friday of every month. So we will see you hopefully next month at the end of August, and have a great weekend and enjoy your Friday, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.